Hey guys, in this episode I'm going to show you how to do dramatic lighting in Photoshop. Hey guys, welcome to Calvin Designs. My name is Calvin and I design, and that's why it's called Calvin Designs. Click right here to subscribe to my YouTube channel and get all these episodes as they come out. And click right here to subscribe to my newsletter to get all the files to follow along all these tutorials. In this episode I'm going to show you how to do dramatic lighting in Photoshop. Here you can see the before and the after. Pretty dramatic change, and it's actually really simple. Let me show you. Okay, so once you've downloaded the file, it'll show up in a folder like this, and you have this JPEG, which you can open in Photoshop. Alright, so it starts off as a color photo, and the first thing we're going to do actually is right-click on this and convert to Smart Object. This is so that we can apply filters and effects that don't actually change the actual pixels of the image. So the first thing we're going to do is go into Filter and do a Camera Raw filter. And it shows up right here. So let's start with go in here and convert to grayscale. So that's the fourth panel here. Convert to grayscale. And what we want to do is turn down the exposure by about 2.5 points. 2 to 2.5. This is, for me, the equivalent of turning off the lights. Sometimes in the highlights, turn that down so it's not quite as bright. Something like this. Alright, so the purpose of this is to essentially say, okay, I'm turning off all the lights. I'm going to go ahead and just make the art just so it's a little bigger. And I'm basically pretending like I'm in this room and I turn off all the lights. And so that now whatever brush strokes I put are light that I'm adding to this scene. And granted, there is already some lights here and here. We're going to go ahead and add some more dramatic lighting. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and create a new group up here, and then a new layer in that group. Okay, and we can go ahead and double click this group and call it Lights. Okay. And the first thing we'll do is just take the lasso tool, the polygon lasso, and just very simply make a rectangle like this. Sorry, a triangle. And we'll go ahead and edit fill with white. Okay. And we can go ahead and deselect over here, Command D. All right. And we could turn this into a smart object as well, which let's just go ahead and do that. Convert to smart object. Okay. And the only thing is, if I hit Command T to transform, it's a little off, and it's going to be a little hard to control. So before, I'm going to go in my history right here, and right before I converted that to a smart object, I'm going to try to make this as straight as possible, something like this. Doesn't really matter if it's 100%, but just so that when you hit Command T, you're as close as possible to the shape, like that. Now I convert it to Smart Object, so that when I hit Command T and I transform and rotate, hit return. If I hit Command T again, well, the bounding box is now following that shape, which is really useful. Okay, and we'll call this beam, like so, as if it was a light beam. And in here on the group, so imagine, let's put this just so we can get, I want to show you what we're going to do here. Imagine this was like 45%. And granted, it's not blurry and doesn't look like a light beam yet, but if you had a few of these, and we'll just for the explanation, I'm going to just make a few copies here like this. And I want these to have a little bit of a smoky look to it, so I'm going to go to the group here and create a mask. Make sure that I'm black and white here, and then now I go to Filter, Render, Clouds on the mask. Okay, so I'm masking out based on these clouds. It's a little too small. That smoke seems really dense, so I'm going to Command T the smoke. Actually, it's selecting all the contents of, so I'm going to hit Escape, unlink that mask, and now hit Command T, and now I'm just adjusting the mask itself. And you can see here's the mask, and here's very dense smoke, and here's kind of lighter smoke. I'm going to go ahead and shrink my artboard just so that I can really make this even bigger. I want to have some sense of smoke, but I don't want it to be too dense, something like that. Okay. All right. And all right, I'm going to go ahead and just delete these beam copies and go to this beam. We can zoom in a little bit now. And it's a smart object, which means I can go here and hit filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and let's go and let's try 25, maybe even more, something like this. That's a little too much to try. So let's try 50. 50 is not bad. And hit OK. All right, and now when I hit Command T, once again, it does become sharp. The filters don't show while you're in transform mode, but that's okay. It's actually easier to set where that's going to be. I want to make this a little bit thinner, just so it's a little more directed in a certain direction. And I hit return or enter, and there you go. And now I can make a copy of that, and I hit Command T again, except this time I'm going to do the other side, something like this. So I'm imagining the light comes in here and down here. So something like this. So let's try that. Make it a little narrower, rotate it, something like that. Okay, and then now I have to fill in the gaps. So go like this, like so, hit return. So every time, hold down Alt, make a copy of the layer, Command T, rotate, enter. And again, Command T. And it'd be good to make them a little thinner, make sure that all the beams are not always exactly the same size. And now you can kind of see that there's some beams going there, but all hidden in within the smoke, which is kind of cool. If I want to, I can move, if the smoke is not in the exact right place, I can move that around. This is actually kind of good. And so I have that sense of smoke. I don't know if you remember, I changed the opacity to 45, and it's important that within this step that I exaggerate all the lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that back to, let's try 90. Okay, 90 is good. Another quick way of doing that, by the way, I'm just going to hide all these smart filters, is in the Move tool. If you go on a layer and on the keypad, you just hit 90, it changes the opacity. That's the shortcut for that. So 90, I'm just hitting 90 really quick, and all my beams are now 90%. All right, yes, there's some bleeding over here, and we'll fix that. But right now, I really wanted to show some of that, the beams. Another thing I'm going to do now is make a copy of the first one here, and let's go ahead and Command T that, make it a little bigger. Let's make this a little bit fatter, something like this, and I hit return. And on this one, I'm going to make it, I hit V for the Move tool, and then let's try 40% or 50%. It kind of bleeds over there. I'm not really, it kind of takes away a little bit of those too evident beams. It's a little too much. Let's do 40%, that's pretty good. And now I can go ahead and make a copy and bring it something like this. Let's make it really fat like that. Okay. We're adding another, just so that it was a little too strong. It looked like brush strokes a little bit. All right. So this is the first step. And let's go ahead and group all these. So select them, and then you can hit the little group button. And we'll call this left window, like so. And now let's go ahead and take the first one here, hold down the Alt to make a copy, and it brought it here. Let's bring it out of this group here, and let's make a new group. Put this, make sure this is inside, and call this right window. All right, so we're going to do this window here. Select that. All right, and let's do the first one, something like this. Let's make them a little narrower, something like that. Not too bad. Like I said, don't worry about bleeding over. We'll fix that in a moment. And then the other side, something like this. Maybe a little more, a little further, something like that. If you see that there's a corner, just stretch it out. Doesn't matter. All right, something like that. Maybe a little higher somewhere. There we go. Okay, and now I can fill in the gaps, like so. There's a little bit. Let's move this one with the arrow keys. Move it a little to the right. And then this one needs a rotation, like so. Something like that. Take this one maybe a little thinner. Yep. Not bad. Okay. The gaps, these are a little strong. Let's I command click to go onto the one that I want to go onto. And let's make this one a little thicker so that the beams are not quite that pronounced. Okay, something like this. And I want the light to somewhat fade a little bit as it goes to here. So what I'm going to do is on this group that's within this group, the right window, I'm going to make a mask and go to the gradients tool. Make sure that the gradient I have is foreground to transparent. In this case, foreground is black. So if I click and drag my mouse from here to here, it's going to slowly fade. So that light kind of fades. That was a little too much. So either I change the opacity of my gradient, or which I prefer to do is zoom out a little bit and just use the gradient in a different way. There you go, something like that. Maybe a little bit over here. Oop, a little too much. Let's go and do it again. Oop, again, too much. Something like that. And let's go into left window. Do the same thing. Yep, a little strong there. And a little bit down here. Oop, too much. Just little touches. I don't want to go too strong. And then another thing is, I don't want to go past this. If it goes a little bit past, sure, but I don't want these weird lines. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little gradient right there. So there's a little glow, which is fine, but not too much. And same with this right here. Something like this. There we go. I can even take off a little bit there. Okay. Okay, so now we have those lights, and they're all within the smoke, which we could edit if we wanted to, but for now, I'm pretty happy with this. Okay, and then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to make some lens flares. So create a new layer, and go ahead and fill it. Edit, fill, right here, with black. Okay. And we're going to make this a smart object, put it in screen mode. And so black in screen mode is basically transparent. And now if you go and do a render lens flare, you'll see. So I'm trying to do it for this window, so I'm trying to do a similar direction. Something like this. Okay. 100 and it's 5300. That's the first lens flare. I hit OK, and then I'm going to go ahead and add another one, lens flare, and by default I'll say, do you want to edit the one you have or add one? My default is that I add one, and I'm going to go ahead and let's try these other ones. There's 35, 105, or the movie. I think the 105 is pretty good. Maybe 100 is too much. Let's do 80. Okay, so I'm adding more artifacts. Okay, and now I can take the move tool and move this. Granted, there's chopping happening, which I can fix in a moment. Something like this, and I want to, if I go to adjustments and hue saturation, I don't want any color in there, so just desaturate that completely. Okay, and again, this is a smart object, so it just became a effect. All right. And another thing that I like to do for this type of lighting is to Gaussian blur the lens flare. You'll see it looks like dust motes almost. 50 is maybe too high. Let's try 20. It's too little. Let's bring it up a little bit. Something like this. 20, 21, yeah, 30. Let's zoom out and see what we're dealing with. See those? I want to keep these lines, but I don't want all these. Some little spots is nice, but not too much. Once again, it's a smart filter, so I can always come back and, oh, I did too much or whatever. It's easy to change. So you see now I have this lens flare that's not quite as pronounced, and it just helps light this the scene. Granted, it needs a mask, so go ahead and mask. Go to my gradient, and I'm gonna say, let's take it from here. Hold down the Shift key to make it nice and straight, down to there, and a little further this way. Okay, oop, that was a little too much. And click and drag right there. Okay, I really want to give a sense of like there's a strong light coming from outside. It would be better not in the middle there, but on the right side, something like this. All right, the Gaussian blur, let's go back, double click Gaussian blur to edit that. Let's try 20, see what that gives us. Hit OK. And that didn't work out. Let's undo that. So by editing the Gaussian blur, it actually went in and edited the other effects, and it moved my point of lens flare. So it's important that when you do both lens flares, you don't move them in before you add them. That's a little unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Okay, I kind of like it, and I could just hold down the Alt key and duplicate it, bring it over here, something like this, and that's pretty cool. Okay, now the trick is right now all my lighting is just white. It's just white being brushed on top of the darkened photo. Actually, before we get into the final step, there's one more thing I like to do, and let's just group these and call them what they are, the flares, and then we'll do another one, and we'll call this, let's just call them spots. And I go in here, I take a brush, it's just a round, simple brush. Let's make it 1500 pixels, 0 hardness, D for default colors, X for white on top. All right, and then I do a spot. Granted, it's a big spot right now. V for move, and then Command T. What I'm trying to do at this point is just complexify the lighting a little bit. So I like to do that by starting with a perfectly round brush, rotating a little bit, and giving some kind of movement. So perspective is Command, Alt, and Shift. So I'm creating a perspective on this round brush. I'm going to bring this down a little bit, and like this, and then make this quite a bit bigger. And it looks very intrusive right now, but you'll see in a moment. It should be a little longer. So I'm going to undo some of that perspective. Something like this. All right, hit return, and then I'm going to make a copy and rotate, Command T, rotate it. I just want a little bit of lighting in some places, and you'll see I'm going to tone it down considerably. Here on the ground, let's rotate that, make that a little smaller, something like this. You can even bring it down here. Okay, now these spots are much too strong, so I would hold on V and then like 20%, something like that. That's not bad. Now you see how this is all gray instead of it being lighter cobblestone. That is because all these effects I've done so far have just been adding white. So the trick, here's where the real trick comes in. I'm going to turn up these to 30%. The real trick comes in here. I go on top of the image that I started with, and I darkened it, and I make a new layer, and I hit D for default colors, and then Alt delete, which fills. The other way of filling that is just going edit, fill with black. All right. So what this does is it hides the image below and just shows me all the lighting effects that I have. So the clouded, beams, and the blurred out lens flares, my little light beams, and so on. And now when I go into channels and I hold down the Command key or Control on a PC, and I click on the RGB, it turns these pixels into a selection. So basically, I've converted this image that you see here into a selection. And to demonstrate what that looks like, you can go to Quick Mask and hide the RGB layer, and you'll see my selection is now everything that used to be white. Pretty simple. Okay, so I can go out of Quick Mask and go back to my layers, and let's go ahead and just group all the lighting effects right here. group that, double click it to call it lighting. And we can go ahead and hide this for now, and then this black layer is no longer needed for now. All right, and then I go here and I make a copy, okay, drag it down, go into the camera raw filter, and instead of plus 2.5, let's just start by doing 1. So I'm overexposing it by 1 step. We could even do 2. Let's just do 2 for now. And we can come back and play with this. Hit OK. And then the selection that I have, I turn it into a mask. Very simple. What did I do? I had, let's put the black over. I had a selection, and I turned it into a mask. And instead of adding white, I'm revealing an image of the same image that's overexposed. So as opposed to just adding white, I'm actually revealing pixels of what the image would have looked like had the lighting actually been like that. So that's a more natural way of showing that. And what's nice is I can go in here in the camera raw filter and add effects. So for example, I want a little less clarity in the lights. So I'm kind of making it a little bit fuzzier, which you can see here. So it makes that sort of like gleaming light effect. And we can increase the exposure just a little bit, not too much, because you don't want to lose too much of the detail. So 2.4 is maybe a little high, something like this. See, do we want to open up the shadows? Sure, that's nice. I like turning down the clarity because it gives that sort of a fuzzy, bright light feeling. So let's hit OK on that, and we can see. You can see how that it gave that glowy look in the lights there. Now, if I feel like I've lost a little bit of my light rays and so on, I can always go in here and add and adjust these what this looks like, my mask. The easiest way is Command M to bring up your curves, and so if I add an S curve, for example, or let's just lighten the whole thing. So before, after. See, I'm essentially by lighting the mask, I'm revealing more. Dark hides and light reveals. So I'm adding a little more, maybe a little too much, but let's do it like this. Okay. All right, so that's the essential part. I would finish this by doing a Command-Alt-Shift-E, which makes another layer on top of everything that's below. And I would convert this to a smart object and do another camera raw. Within this, I like to always do a little bit of a post-crop vignetting. It really helps close the photo up a little bit. Something like this. I like maybe a little bit of clarity to make those bricks come out a little bit more. Not too much. Bring down the highlights a little bit, open up the shadows, something like this, and there you go. So that's pretty simple, and it's a pretty simple way of it's essentially doing a dodge and burn, but using the pixels of the image as opposed to just burning out the pixels or adding black or white. So I hope you learned something there. All right, guys, I hope you liked that episode, and if you did, please share it on Facebook or Google+, and leave a comment below if you want any other tutorials. I'll see you in the next episode.